My name is Engineer Emmanuel Ede. I have been in the practice of civil engineering for 15 years in Nigeria and handled a lot of projects that span across building structures, bridges, dams, highways, and some other environmental projects. And it is imperative that a civil engineer is involved in any type of project that you want to handle. After all, civil engineers are responsible for the built environment, and you cannot just overlook the importance of a civil engineer in whatever building project you intend to carry out. They are a vital part, a vital tool in the construction industry. Okay, when you talk about complexity of a project, I think basically a project can be complex depending on your understanding of the project. So someone who is not inclined, inclined or construction inclined, a project might look complex. When you pick up a building plan, you're seeing all those lines and all that might seem complex. But when, if I may describe my most complex project, I would say a building trust in Port Harcourt was for a religious organization. They had this large area that they needed to roof, and unfortunately, they had done it before, and there was a collapse, a failure. So we were invited upon to redesign the roof structure and then make it work. So it was complex because there was already a failure, and so we had to rejig some of the structures, the joints, then the roofing, the arrangements of the steel trusses, and I would say that was done about 10 years ago, and that structure has been in use for about 8 years since that construction took place. Then another complex one was in Lagos, Agor area of Lagos. It was the construction of a four-story building, a three-story building rather, but the land was waterlogged and all, so we had to first do some filling and then had to found the structure on that land. So it involved some, like I said, sand filling, and then we had to employ raft foundation and build on that. And the interesting thing is that when you're handling such a project, you must take into account settlement. So as we're building, the building was going down, it was settling. So, but it was no fear. We expected that it will happen because when you are building on such foundation, on such land, you must take into account settlement. And that's what the mistake sometimes that unexperienced people do, or someone who's not a professional. You build, and then by the time you complete the building, you find out that the level which you started it is not the level which it is currently. So you must take that into account. So I won't say complex, but I'll call them challenges. So every building, every particular site has its own challenges. So you must envisage these challenges, and then you must be ready to tackle them as you go along in the construction. Yes, very, very important to have a civil engineer in your building project. And the role of civil engineers in building construction is quite wide because from the planning to the designing to overseeing the construction of your building, civil engineers play very vital roles along with other professionals. So if you want to have a proper building that will stand the test of time, it's important that you have these professionals come into place. And the civil engineer is one professional whom you can't do without if you intend to achieve a good quality project. Because civil engineers plan, design, and oversee implementation of buildings as well as other infrastructural projects. Now, let's take a building for instance. Before you start the actual construction, a lot of things must be put in place. First, you must plan the building. You must determine what kind of structure you want to achieve, what kind of building. Is it a residential building? Is it a commercial building? Is it a hospitality building? Say hotel, for instance. Now, when you determine that, the architect must also come into place, to translate the desire of the client, what the client wants to achieve, must the architect transmit it into paper, and then the civil engineer is responsible for ensuring that those things come into reality. You know, it is an erroneous belief that when you engage professionals such as civil engineers in your project, that the cost will go up. Actually, the only cost you'll be spending more on are the fees for the professional. And since he's trying to get that job from you or get it from you instead of a professional, he tends to lower the cost and then gives you something that is not qualitative. Now, a professional will charge you more, but then you spend less on the project. Why do I say this? When a project is being carried out by a professional, because he knows what is required. Take for instance, what are the things that constitute the cost of a project? In Nigeria now, right now, it's cement and then the steel rods, the steel reinforcement, if you are carrying out a multi-story structure. Now, I've seen it happen many times that when someone who is not a professional is building, they tend to over reinforce. I will explain that. For instance, in an area where you need to have used say 20 rods of 12 mm, the person who is not a professional will go ahead and use 30 because he's not sure of what he's doing, and so he wants to put as many as possible so that there won't be any mistake in the future, there won't be any incidents. But an engineer has designed that building. Engineer who designs the building and sees that the code, according to the code, the standard building codes and everything, he sees that what is required is maybe 17 or 18. Maximum the engineer will use is 20, which is the allowable reinforcement, an increase in reinforcement you should use on that building. So the engineer uses the correct amount of reinforcement and saves you cost on that particular building material. Meanwhile, the non-professional will go ahead, we call it over-design or over-reinforcing and over-reinforce. So you see that the cost of your building goes up astronomically when you do not engage the services of a professional. So it happens in so many areas of a building. So by the time you finish your building, you discover that you spend so much on it because you did not allow a professional to take charge and oversee it. And then we've seen instances where there are building failures, and then you go ahead to check, to investigate, because you investigate any building failure that occurs, and then you see that there's a proper number of rods. Number of rods were adequate, in fact excess. Then why then did the building fail? We discover in many cases that it is the arrangement of this reinforcement. Now, someone who has built, who some people claim, to be builders. They are actually builders. They are building professionals. But some people, because they have worked with builders and all that, they now think that they are builders. And so they claim to have built. Someone gives them a project, of course, and then they do it one way or the other, and the building stands because it will stand in the first instance. And then, they carry on in that manner and, go ahead to increase. What we discover with non-professionals is that for every building that they do, they increase the quantity of reinforcement, increase the quantity of the materials used in the construction of that building. And so also the cost keeps going up. So they increase the quantity of reinforcement and the cost keeps going up. Now, with the engagement of a civil engineering professional, you see that your cost is managed because the right amount of materials are used. There is no unnecessary excesses which will increase the cost. So a building that you would have achieved with X amount with a professional, you go ahead and achieve it with maybe 1.5x amount when you do not engage services of a professional. And buildings are meant to stand the test of time. Why is it that buildings that were constructed over 100 years ago, they still stand, and still looking solid? But then we've had numerous cases of buildings that fail under construction, buildings that collapse under construction or just after construction, or a building stands for 10 years and suddenly there's a collapse. Why is that the case? It is simple, because these days, unfortunately, people have jettisoned the use of the proper professionals for a job. And the civil engineer is trained to ensure that your building stands right from the beginning to the end, and then there's a time frame for a building, to stand. We agree that buildings are not meant to stay forever, but then we also see that buildings are permanent structures. So a building that was done 200 years ago should still be standing today, if the right materials are used, and then they are placed in the proper order.